You say you want to fix your life, but deep down, you keep folding when things get uncomfortable. You delay your potential. You make excuses. You scroll past your pain and call it peace. But here's the brutal truth. No one is coming to save you. Not your girlfriend, not your job, not your therapist. If you're tired of being ruled by your emotions, your weakness, your past, then it's time to kill the version of you that keeps sabotaging everything. In this video, you'll learn 12 brutal Stoic rules that will break your illusions, crush your ego, and force you to rise. But be warned, this is not comfort. This is war. Rule 1. Kill the weak version of yourself. You must build up your life action by action, and be content if each one achieves its goal as far as possible, and no one can keep you from this. Marcus Aurelius, there is a version of you that knows what needs to be done. It doesn't complain. It doesn't wait. It doesn't negotiate. It acts quietly, relentlessly, with purpose. But that version is not in control, not yet. Right now, the version running your life is the one that whispers, just 5 more minutes. Start next week. It's not that bad. And you listen. That version, let's call it what it is weak. Not because it lacks potential, but because it's addicted to avoiding pain. It hides behind logic, behind emotion, behind comfort. You want to know why your life feels stuck? Because you've let that version stay alive too long. It talks like a friend, but it's a parasite. It feeds on delay, on softness, on your silence. It tells you to rest when you haven't earned it. It makes pleasure the goal and discipline the enemy. It convinces you that your potential can wait, but it won't wait forever. Every day you let it live, your future dies a little. The Stoics understood this battle wasn't external. It was internal. They weren't trying to fix the world. They were trying to dominate the battlefield of the mind. Marcus Aurelius didn't conquer empires by being kind to his excuses. He wrote to himself like a man at war, because he was, and so are you. Make no mistake, this isn't self-help advice. This is psychological warfare. And the enemy is the voice that tells you comfort is safety, that procrastination is just rest, that your emotions are truth, that you're doing your best when you know you're not. You will never build a disciplined life with that version of yourself still breathing. It must be confronted, cornered, and killed. How? Start here. When your alarm rings, get up immediately. When fear tells you to wait, move faster. When your mind says, let's think about it, act before it finishes the sentence. You don't fix your life by adding more affirmations. You fix it by removing the liar that lives inside your own head. The liar that's been stalling your growth since the beginning. And you don't need to explain your transformation. You don't need to perform it. You don't need applause for killing the version of you that's been killing your potential. You just need to decide right now that this is where it ends, because you will either evolve or repeat the same patterns for another year, another decade, another life. And if you're not willing to bury that weak version of yourself, then you better get comfortable living under its rule. Because weakness never stays quiet. It becomes your identity. But if you're ready, if you're done pretending, then look in the mirror. Not with judgment, but with finality, and say, you had your chance. Now it's my turn. This isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming who you were before you started shrinking, before you started lying, before you got tired of your own promises. And to become that version again, you don't need motivation. You need a funeral. Kill the weak version of yourself. No more excuses. No more softness. No more survival. This is rebirth through brutality. This is the first rule. This is how you begin. Rule 2. Master your reactions like a warrior. It's not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. Epictetus. Most men today walk through life as emotional slaves. They think they're in control, but the moment as something unexpected happens, a disrespectful comment, a delay, a challenge, they lose all composure. A single message ruins their day. A small inconvenience derails their discipline. They let the outside world dictate their inner state like puppets on a string. But here's the Stoic truth. The man who can't master his reactions will always be ruled by strangers, by events, by his own untrained mind. The Stoics weren't emotionless. They were unshakable. There's a difference. They didn't respond with panic when things went wrong. They responded with precision, with calm, with control, because they understood something powerful. The world will always test you, but it's your response, not the event, that defines who you are. It's not the insult that wounds you. It's your belief about the insult. It's not the rejection that destroys you. It's the story you attach to it. You can't stop the world from being chaotic, but you can stop yourself from being its victim. If your emotions can be provoked by anything in anyone, then your peace is not real. It's rented. And every troll, every delay, every unexpected trigger has the power to evict you from it. That's not strength. That's slavery. A man who reacts to everything is easy to control. He's predictable. He's weak. But the man who trains himself to pause, to breathe, to choose his response, like a warrior selects his weapon, he's untouchable. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't crumble. He doesn't lose his edge because someone else lost theirs. He remains solid, grounded, strategic. That's not detachment. It's discipline. So how do you become that man? It starts with awareness. When something upsets you, you pause. Not out of fear, but out of power. You don't explode. You observe. You ask, what part of this do I actually control? If the answer is nothing external, then the battle is internal. And that's where the Stoics fought. Next, you train your mind to separate facts from stories. She ignored you. That's a fact. You're unworthy. That's a story. He criticized your work. That's a fact. You're a failure. That's a story. Stop reacting to fiction. Start responding to what's real. And finally, you reclaim your peace by making it non-negotiable. Peace isn't passivity. It's not weakness. It's power under control. It's the ability to remain calm when chaos demands a reaction. It's the strength to say, you don't get to control me. Not with your words, not with your behavior, not with your chaos. The man who owns his reactions owns his life because he can't be baited. He can't be rattled. He doesn't fight every battle. He picks the ones that matter, and he wins them on his terms. If you want to fix your life, stop reacting like your emotions are for sale. Don't give your peace to people who haven't earned your energy. Don't let the outside world hijack your inner world. Learn to respond slowly, powerfully, like a man who's trained for this moment. Because when you master your reactions, you stop being a slave and start becoming something far more dangerous. Calm under fire. Rule 3. Do the hard things, especially when you don't feel like it. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Epictetus. Here's the raw truth most people never admit. You already know what you need to do. You don't need another strategy, another morning routine, another podcast episode. You know the actions that would change your life. Waking up earlier, training your body, cutting off toxic people, saying no when it's inconvenient, getting focused, staying focused, taking consistent, disciplined action, even when nobody is watching. But you don't do it. Why? Because you're waiting to feel like it. Because your entire life has been built around avoiding discomfort, not confronting it. And that's why you stay stuck. Most people are slaves to their emotions. They only act when it feels good, when they're in the mood. But feelings are liars. They're inconsistent. They trick you into believing the hard path is unsafe. That if something feels uncomfortable, it must be wrong. That if you're tired, you deserve a break. That if you're afraid, it means stop. But discomfort is not danger. It's the training ground. It's the forge. It's where transformation happens. And that's what the Stoics understood better than anyone. They didn't rise to power by feeling ready. They rose because they chose discipline, especially when they didn't want to. Look around. Most men today are soft, not physically, but mentally. They've been taught that struggle is a sign something's wrong, that stress means back off, that fatigue is an excuse. But the Stoic path rejects that mindset completely. You don't wait for motivation. You act in spite of its absence. You don't give your power to your feelings. You dominate them. You build your life like a warrior builds his armor. Through repetition, through pain, through sweat, through self-mastery. That's the kind of strength you can't fake. And it doesn't come from comfort. It comes from doing the things you avoid. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." And that's exactly what you're doing. You've already lost battles you never fought. You've already lived the pain of failure without ever putting in the work. You think it's the work that hurts, but it's the delay. It's the avoidance. It's the endless cycle of wanting change, but refusing to step into the fire required to create it. Growth doesn't feel good. It burns. But pain isn't the enemy. Stagnation is. So here's your decision point. You can keep waiting for motivation, or you can start acting with discipline. Wake up when your mind screams for more sleep. Say no when your emotions beg for comfort. Train when you're exhausted. Study when you're bored. Speak truth when silence would be easier. Because every time you push through that resistance, you harden your mind. You sharpen your identity. You prove that you're not ruled by feelings. You're ruled by principles. And when you live like that, life bends, results compound, confidence returns, but only if you're willing to suffer now, for the future you say you want. Because there are only two pains in life, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. One builds, the other destroys. One ends, the other lingers for the rest of your life. Rule 4, cut the noise and master your focus. If you are everywhere, you are nowhere. Seneca. Focus isn't just about productivity. It's about identity. What you give your attention to becomes your life. And most men don't realize this until it's already too late. Until their best years have been spent in distraction, chasing noise, reacting to every impulse, and calling it normal. But here's the Stoic truth. You cannot build clarity in a chaotic mind. You cannot live a disciplined life with a brain trained to chase the next notification. You cannot fix your life if your attention is constantly being stolen by things that don't matter. Look around. We live in a world built to keep you unfocused. Every platform, every app, every click is fighting for your mind. The system is designed to addict you, to break your attention span, to reward emotional reactivity, and punish deep concentration. And it works, because instead of focusing, you scroll. Instead of thinking, you consume. Instead of doing, you drown in the illusion of activity. You confuse stimulation for progress. You confuse reacting with living. And slowly, silently, your mind begins to rot, not from lack of intelligence, but from lack of intention. The Stoics warned us about this long before smartphones existed. Marcus Aurelius said, "Concentrate every minute like a Roman, fully present, fully engaged, fully alive. No multitasking, no passive consumption. Just direct, deliberate attention to the task at hand. That's what power looks like." And Seneca's words still strike with brutal clarity. If you are everywhere, you are nowhere. You can't move forward if you're scattered in 100 directions. You can't grow if you never go deep. You can't hear your intuition if you're drowning in mental noise. So how do you reclaim your mind? First, you must declare war on distraction, not politely, not someday. Now, every meaningless notification is a thief. Every shallow habit is a virus. Every indulgent dopamine hit weakens your will. You must protect your attention like a warrior guards his sword. That means turning off what doesn't serve you. It means uninstalling what pulls you away from purpose. It means learning to sit in silence and actually feel the resistance without immediately escaping into stimulation. Next, build deep work rituals. Carve out time in your day where your focus is sacred. No multitasking, no passive noise, just you and the work, the thinking, the training, the building. Even 1 hour a day of pure focus will separate you from 99% of men today. Not because you're smarter, but because you're clearer. Because while they're pulled by algorithms and impulses, you're training your mind like a blade. And finally, train your presence in the small moments. When you eat, eat. When you read, read. When you walk, observe. Every act of full attention is a rep for your mental strength. Most men live in a constant state of psychological flinching. Switching tabs, checking phones, answering messages, responding to noise. But a Stoic lives differently. A Stoic chooses where his mind goes. A Stoic builds his life from the inside out, starting with attention. Remember this: a distracted man is not just less productive. He is weaker, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. But a focused man, he's dangerous, because he can think for himself. He can build in silence. He can choose his path without needing constant stimulation. In a world addicted to chaos, the focused man becomes untouchable. Rule 5. Stop seeking approval. You don't need permission to grow. It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinions than our own. Marcus Aurelius: you say you want to grow. You say you want to become disciplined, focused, independent. But the moment someone looks at you sideways, the moment you sense judgment, misunderstanding, or resistance, you shrink. You play small. You betray yourself, not because you're weak, but because you've been conditioned to believe that approval equals safety, that acceptance equals peace, that if others like you, then you're doing something right. But the Stoics would tell you this is slavery. Mental, emotional, spiritual slavery. The modern world has twisted your wiring. You've been trained to post before you act, to seek feedback before you commit, to poll the crowd before you live your truth. You hesitate, not because you're unsure of your path, but because you're afraid to walk it alone. You've allowed the eyes of others to become your prison. You delay your evolution just to stay likable, to stay understandable, to stay inside the box people built for who they used to think you were. And that's the trap. You cannot transform while still needing to be liked. The Stoics understood that popularity and principle rarely walk together. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but he wrote privately about his flaws, his fears, and the pressure to live according to virtue, not applause. Epictetus taught students to expect mockery, misunderstanding, even hatred when they started choosing the harder path. Because once you stop chasing external validation, once you start acting according to reason, silence, and truth, people get uncomfortable. Your growth becomes a mirror for their stagnation, and they will try to pull you back down, not always out of malice, but out of familiarity. And here's the truth that most men don't want to face. You will never become powerful until you're willing to be misunderstood, until you're willing to be called obsessed, arrogant, antisocial, robotic, cold, or different, until you walk away from approval and replace it with alignment. Because the more committed you are to your principles, the more resistance you will attract. And not from strangers, but from the people closest to you, from the people who like the older version of you, the softer, more compliant version, the one who laughed at every joke, said yes to every request, bent at every inconvenience. That version made people comfortable, but comfort never built anything. So if you truly want to rise, prepare for rejection, prepare for distance, prepare for being talked about, and let it happen. Because their noise is not your compass. Their opinions are not your code. Their misunderstanding is not your responsibility. You don't need their permission. You don't need their validation. You need to decide. Decide to rise, whether they clap or not. Decide to show up, whether they get it or not. Decide to walk the path, whether it's crowded or completely silent. Because the day you stop needing approval is the day you finally meet the man you were meant to become. Rule 6. Let silence be your power. Let silence be your general rule, or say only what is necessary, and in few words. Epictetus. Most people talk far too much because silence makes them uncomfortable. They fear being misunderstood, overlooked, or forgotten, so they fill every gap with noise. They explain themselves constantly. They overexpress, overshare, overreact, thinking it makes them seem honest, real, or confident, but it doesn't. It makes them predictable. It exposes their emotions, their insecurities, their lack of control. The Stoics saw this clearly. Epictetus didn't teach his students to be loud. He taught them to be exact, disciplined, silent when it served them, because silence is not the absence of strength, it's the presence of mastery. Look around today. People use words to perform. They argue online to feel important. They post everything they think and feel because they crave attention. But attention without purpose is weakness. When you constantly speak just to be heard, you dilute the power of your words. You reveal your plans. You expose your fears. You give people the blueprint to manipulate your emotions. And more dangerously, you train yourself to be reactive. You speak before you think. You express before you evaluate. You become a slave to every emotion that passes through your mind. But the man who trains himself to speak less gains something rare: control. Control over his mind, control over his energy, control over how the world affects him. The Stoics didn't use silence as a retreat. They used it as a weapon, a way to observe, to calculate, to conserve strength and respond with intent instead of impulse. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor with the power to command armies, still wrote to himself about restraint, about not reacting to criticism, about keeping his judgments hidden until they were solid. That kind of self-governance isn't passive, it's elite. Silence also gives you the upper hand, because when you don't rush to defend yourself, when you don't explain your every move, when you stop leaking information about your inner life, you become unpredictable. And unpredictability is power. People fear what they can't read. They're unsettled by what they don't understand. Your silence becomes a mirror, forcing them to confront their own assumptions. Your stillness becomes a threat, because it shows they don't control you. The more disciplined your speech, the sharper your presence. And let's be clear, silence isn't cowardice, it's composure. It's knowing that your energy is sacred and your words are weapons, not toys. Every time you speak, you are either gaining power or giving it away. You're either elevating your image or eroding your credibility. The man who can remain calm when provoked, silent when baited, and focused when challenged is a man who cannot be controlled by others because he has already mastered himself. So stop reacting to everything. Stop broadcasting your pain, your goals, your strategies, your next move. Let them guess. Let them wonder. Let them fill the silence with noise, while you fill yours with purpose. The man who builds in silence, who works without applause, who moves without announcing, that man is dangerous, because he doesn't need recognition. He already has power, internal, quiet, undeniable power. Rule 7. Own your mistakes without shame or excuses. A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. Seneca. There's no man walking this earth without regrets. No one escapes life without stumbling, failing, betraying their own standards, or falling short of who they said they would become. The difference between a man who stays broken and a man who rebuilds is not what happened to him. It's how he responds to it. The weak run from their past. They bury it under distraction, fake positivity, or denial. The strong face it without flinching, without justifying, without rewriting the story. Because Stoicism isn't about pretending you've always been disciplined. It's about becoming someone who refuses to lie to himself anymore. Most people spend their lives editing their own history. They water down the truth to protect their self-image. They tell stories that make them the victim. They deflect blame, pointing at their parents, their ex, the system, the timing, the economy, anything but themselves. But here's the hard truth. You cannot fix what you won't own. If you don't take full responsibility for how you've lived, the mistakes you've made, the time you've wasted, and the standards you've broken, you will never rise. You'll just keep repeating the same patterns, wearing different clothes, speaking in more sophisticated excuses. The Stoics didn't believe in shame. They believed in transformation. But transformation requires friction, and friction begins with honesty. Seneca didn't deny his failures. He used them as fuel. Marcus Aurelius, even as emperor, wrote pages of self-correction, not to impress anyone, but to keep himself accountable. They didn't aim to appear flawless. They aimed to become unbreakable. That path starts with one brutal question. Where have I been lying to myself? And if you have the courage to answer that, without ego, without deflection, then you've already begun the process of becoming who you were meant to be. Owning your mistakes doesn't mean drowning in guilt. That's not Stoicism. That's self-pity. This isn't about punishing yourself for the past. It's about using it, turning every scar into a symbol of wisdom, turning every failure into a foundation, not because you're proud of it, but because you're done running from it. That's what real growth looks like. Not some clean, curated motivational journey, but a hard reset fueled by truth. And once you commit to that, you don't need to explain your past. You just need to outgrow it. So stop hiding your wounds. Stop trying to look perfect. Stop avoiding the mirror. You can't rebuild a strong life on a foundation of denial. What you did, what you avoided, who you used to be. Own all of it, not to wallow in it, but to rise from it. You are not defined by your lowest moments, but you are responsible for what you do next. Rule 8. Discomfort is your teacher. Stop running from it. Don't hope that events will turn out the way you want. Welcome events in whichever way they happen. This is the path to peace. Epictetus. Everyone wants peace, but almost no one wants the price that peace demands. The moment life gets quiet, people reach for noise. The moment they feel pain, they reach for comfort. The moment uncertainty shows up, they panic and numb themselves with entertainment, food, sex, scrolling, anything to avoid the rawness of what they feel. But here's the brutal truth. Discomfort is not a problem to escape. It's a message to understand. It's not a curse. It's a mirror. And the more you run from it, the more power you give it. The Stoics didn't run from pain. They walked straight into it. They believed that if life presents discomfort, there's something inside it you're meant to master. A lesson, a threshold, a sharpening of your character that comfort can never provide. And when you keep avoiding it, when you distract yourself every time you feel sadness, boredom, stress, or uncertainty, you rob yourself of the opportunity to grow. You stay soft. You stay blind. You stay untested. And untested men do not build unshakable lives. Every time you run from discomfort, you reinforce the belief that you're not strong enough to handle it. But every time you sit with it, when you don't distract yourself, when you breathe through the tension, when you let the feeling pass without reacting, you build something rare. Emotional durability. That's what the Stoics trained for. They didn't want an easy life. They wanted a stronger mind, because they knew peace doesn't come from avoiding difficulty. Peace comes from becoming someone who is no longer afraid of it. Ask yourself, how many opportunities have you missed because you feared being uncomfortable? How many conversations avoided, chances delayed, discipline skipped? Not because they were impossible, but because they made you feel something you didn't want to feel. That's not a life of freedom. That's a life of hiding. But discomfort doesn't exist to punish you. It exists to expose the parts of you that still need growth, the weakness, the resistance, the emotional blind spots. That's why the Stoics welcomed adversity, not with pleasure, but with purpose. So the next time something hurts, don't run, don't numb, don't scroll it away. Sit with it, study it, ask, what is this moment trying to teach me? What strength is it trying to build? Maybe it's trying to sharpen your patience. Maybe it's showing you how undisciplined you've become. Maybe it's just testing how bad you really want to change. Either way, lean into it, because the pain you avoid today becomes the regret you carry tomorrow. But the pain you face, that becomes your power. Rule 9. Discipline is greater than motivation. Build it daily. No man is free who is not master of himself. Epictetus. Most people think freedom means doing what you want, but the Stoics flipped that completely. Real freedom, they said, is doing what you must, especially when you don't want to. Because if you only act when you're comfortable, you're not free, you're enslaved, not by chains, but by your own moods. And today, we live in a world that worships motivation. Everyone's looking for the next hit of inspiration, the perfect video, the perfect podcast, the perfect moment to feel ready. But the truth is, motivation is a liar. It disappears when things get hard. It vanishes when life gets real. And if you depend on it, your progress will always be temporary. Discipline is the opposite. It's consistent, cold, unemotional. It doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't rise with your mood or fall with your stress. It's there on the good days and the bad ones, when you're tired, when you're angry, when you're unmotivated, when you're doubting everything. Discipline doesn't flinch, it moves. And that's what separates average men from great ones. Not intensity, but consistency. Not emotion, but execution. Let's make this practical. Discipline means waking up early, even when your body screams for more sleep. It means putting your phone away when your mind craves distraction. It means showing up to the gym when you feel flat, reading when you feel lazy, sticking to your principles when compromise would be easier. And yes, it feels boring, but boring is what builds character. You don't need a spark, you need a system. Wake up, move your body, eat clean, say no to what doesn't serve you, reflect, execute, repeat. These aren't just habits, they're declarations that you own your time, your mind, and your future. The Stoics weren't waiting for a perfect morning to begin their day. They had duties, responsibilities, codes they lived by, codes that didn't flex based on mood. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire during plagues, betrayals, and grief. He still wrote, still reflected, still acted. Why? Because he wasn't living on emotional autopilot. He was governed by something stronger, principle. And if you want peace, strength, and progress, you have to do the same. That means building a routine that operates independently of how you feel. You don't ask, do I want to do this? You act as if it's not negotiable, because for the man who wants to rise, it isn't. Start seeing discipline not as punishment, but as liberation. Every small promise you keep to yourself rewires your brain. It builds trust. It sharpens focus. It creates gravity, where showing up becomes your default, not your exception. And when discipline becomes who you are, you stop chasing motivation like a junkie. You stop waiting for alignment. You become the thing you were trying to feel. You become action, movement, purpose. So when your body wants comfort, when your mind wants escape, when your emotions beg you to postpone, don't pause, don't negotiate, don't wait for the spark. Be the fire. Rule 10. Stop living in your head. Live in alignment with action. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Marcus Aurelius. Most people don't lack wisdom. They lack alignment. They've consumed thousands of hours of advice, quotes, strategies, and philosophies. They know what to do. They say the right things. They talk about discipline, mindset, and growth. But if you looked at their daily actions, they're nowhere near what they claim to value. And that's the real problem. They're stuck in their heads, obsessed with thought, addicted to theory, paralyzed by overanalysis. And while they think, while they plan, while they imagine, time bleeds away, life moves on, potential goes unused, and the gap between who they are and who they pretend to be gets wider. The Stoics had no tolerance for that gap. Philosophy to them was not something to debate. It was something to live. They didn't chase perfection, but they demanded congruence. Marcus Aurelius didn't write Meditations so he could sound profound. He wrote it to correct himself, to face the reality of who he was each day and align it with the man he claimed to be. And this is where most people fall. They say they want the peace, but live in chaos. They say they want clarity, but scroll mindlessly. They say they value discipline, but keep breaking their own rules. The mind talks. The body betrays. This isn't about being perfect. It's about becoming honest. Because the longer you live out of alignment, the more shame you carry. That's what the modern world calls anxiety. A soul that knows it's out of sync with its own values. You say you want to be stoic, then why are you still reacting emotionally? Why are you still chasing validation? Why are you still wasting time like it doesn't matter? You don't need more information. You need integration. You need to act. Start with this. Write down what you claim to believe. Now compare it to what you did yesterday. That's the truth. And until those two things match, your philosophy is just performance. But when they begin to align, when your values and your behavior finally shake hands, that's when self-respect begins to grow. That's when peace starts to show up. That's when you can look in the mirror without flinching. Not because you're perfect, but because you're consistent. So stop trying to look like a Stoic. Be one. Wake up and live your code. Apply what you know. Speak less. Do more. Start replacing empty promises with daily proof. The world doesn't need another man who talks about discipline. It needs more men who embody it when no one's watching. Rule 11. Train yourself to withstand chaos. Calm is your edge. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. Most men collapse the moment the world stops cooperating. A setback hits, and their mind unravels. A single problem throws their entire rhythm off. One unexpected change in their emotional center falls apart. They call it stress. They call it burnout. But the Stoics had a better name for it: lack of preparation. Because if you don't train for chaos, chaos will always destroy you. It doesn't matter how strong you look, how much you know, or what plans you've made. When life gets loud, only the man who has trained for noise can move in silence. Calm is not natural, it's earned. It's built in the quiet moments when no one is watching. In how you breathe when things go wrong. In how you sit with discomfort without reacting. In how you respond when pressure builds. Most people never practice that. They only seek peace when things are already on fire. But peace, real peace, isn't found in the absence of chaos. It's found in your ability to stay grounded within it. The Stoics trained for adversity because they expected it. They knew life wouldn't play fair, so they didn't pray for a calm sea. They trained to become a steady ship. And here's what most men don't understand. Your emotional baseline is your power. If your heart rate spikes every time someone disrespects you, every time life delays your plans, Every time your comfort is threatened, then you are not strong. You are unstable, and instability leaks into every part of your life. Your focus, your relationships, your decisions. You stop acting from strategy and start reacting from fear. That's how empires fall. That's how personal potential disintegrates. Not through a single failure, but through 100 micro reactions to things that don't matter. So how do you train for chaos? Start by embracing it in small doses. When something frustrates you, don't flinch. When plans change, observe yourself. When pressure builds, slow your breathing. Take control of the one thing you always own, your inner posture. Practice responding with deliberateness, with stillness, because every time you hold the line, every time you choose restraint over panic, stillness over noise, clarity over chaos, you harden your mind. You shape it into something useful, something unshakable, and that becomes your edge. The world doesn't need more people who freak out under pressure. It needs fewer men who collapse when life gets loud. It needs men who stay calm, who see clearly, who hold steady, not because they were born different, but because they trained for it. You want to be unbreakable? Then stop being surprised by adversity. Welcome it, use it. Let it refine your edges until silence becomes your default and storms no longer move you. Rule 12. Build an inner code that never breaks. Your standards are your fortress. First, say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Epictetus. Most men drift through life with no code, no clear standards, no personal laws. They make decisions based on emotion, popularity, convenience, or what hurts the least. They adjust their behavior based on who's in the room. They compromise their values when pressure mounts. And then they wonder why they feel directionless, anxious, weak. But the Stoics lived differently. They didn't let the world shape them. They shaped themselves with intention, with rules, with a code that could not be broken, no matter the chaos around them. A Stoic doesn't ask, what feels right today? He asks, what is right, regardless of how I feel? He doesn't act from impulse. He acts from principle. And those principles are not for show. They are internal laws, a personal constitution, something he wrote with fire and refuses to erase, even when it's inconvenient, especially when it's inconvenient, because that's when the code matters most. Your values mean nothing until they're tested, until your pride is wounded, until your patience is pushed, until you're tired, emotional, tempted to cave in, and you don't. You want to become unshakable. Then stop living by the world's terms. Write your own. Decide what kind of man you are. Decide what lines you don't cross, what habits are non-negotiable, what behaviors are beneath you. Not when it's easy, but when everything in you wants to fold. That's the purpose of a code. It doesn't bend with the weather. It anchors you in storms. And the stronger your code becomes, the less you'll need motivation, advice, or applause, because you'll already know what to do. You'll already know who you are. So start writing it, not for others, for yourself. What time do you wake up? How do you speak to people? What habits will you tolerate? What temptations will you eliminate completely? Who will you never become, even under pressure? Most men never answer these questions. They live reactive lives, adjusting, compromising, fading. But a Stoic lives with precision, clarity, integrity. He doesn't speak about values. He walks them daily. Because in the end, the world doesn't respect the loudest man. It respects the most consistent one. And that consistency comes from your internal laws, enforced by no one but you. That's what separates the disciplined from the impulsive, the master from the slave, the grounded from the chaotic. So build your code, guard it, refine it, and live it so completely that the world itself has no choice but to adjust to you. Closing challenge. Now you've heard the rules, not tips, not suggestions, not gentle encouragements. Rules, forged from ancient fire, delivered without compromise. These aren't for men who want to feel better. They're for men who are ready to become better through pressure, repetition, and pain. But understand this, hearing them means nothing. Knowing changes nothing. Reading Marcus Aurelius, quoting Seneca, nodding at Epictetus, means nothing if your daily life still reflects the same emotional softness, the same excuses, the same wasted time. You will be tested. This week, maybe today, you'll feel the pull to fold, to quit, to delay, to explain your weakness instead of confronting it. And when that moment comes, you have a decision to make. Live as you always have, or live these rules. Because you don't rise through theory, you rise through application. And most of all, you rise alone, quietly, without applause, without external permission, just you and your code. Don't wait for motivation. Don't wait for the right moment. Pick one rule, apply it today, and then again tomorrow, and again the day after that. Not perfectly, but relentlessly, because when you fix your mind, you fix your life. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to our channel for more Stoic wisdom. See you in the next video.